Welcome, hello, I'm James Post, and this show is the Dragon Extravaganza here at M Gallery's Peony at the Powhatan Arboretum in Washington, New Jersey. Welcome. I'm a tattoo artist in Hackettstown, and I went to art school back in the day, and I was in the Army, and went to Brooklyn College and Mason Gross a long time ago. And I've been making art, and my maybe third career is tattooing, so here I am making tattoo-related art and paintings, and yeah, this is a phoenix that fits in the page, and you always let your limitations kind of guide you in the sizing of the thing. So we have a foreshortened phoenix here. And I think what I was trying to do with this show is use some kind of lighter gradients of gray in ink gray wash to kind of like build these things up a little bit and kind of figure out some textures and some layouts and kind of making them as if like they needed to be tattooed. So you leave like space for things. When things overlap, I like having kind of like weird overlapping dynamic things that sometimes they flow, other times they're like jarring a little bit. Like when we get to some of these other ones, you'll see like kind of more like kinked bodies or things that aren't all S shapes in the flow, but that's always like in the back of your mind. But I like Japanese styling tattoos and look at a lot of like Japanese prints and art and tattoos that are like styled after those things because, I mean, they're like really refined, or they've figured out a lot of things, like compositionally, how they'll like flow on the body. So I'm like trying to unlock that, and that takes a lifetime to do. So I'm just like in the middle somewhere, maybe in the beginning even, just trying to unlock some of these. I said I was kind of making these with probably in the back of my head the intent that they could be tattooed at some point in some way. And when you think about it being a tattoo, you leave a little bit of space around certain things, or leave things open. You don't want too much stuff jam-packed. You don't want too much detail jam-packed somewhere. If you have like a 1/4 inch kind of, it's like a good like rule of thumb. So like this would be this big, you know, to be tattooed. I mean, it could go anywhere. It could wrap around an arm. I could adjust it a little bit. It could go on a back. It's rectangular shape, so maybe a back or a torso, but they would be changed a little bit to just flow with the body. The body's not flat. Paper's flat. So the body, you have to either contour things around, or if you're like Chige or Jeff Gogwe, like they've talked about, or he's talked about using the body as almost treating it like a flat canvas and just putting the piece across the body no matter what's there. But generally, looks like, and the way that I was shown is you kind of follow the contours of the body and the musculature and the curves and all that, and kind of get a sense of like what looks better, what feels better. But like I said, I'm on the beginning of the journey, so. Yeah, there's like a trend right now for like kind of micro tattoos, or ones that people think that if it's fresh on the body or something that it's going to look that way forever, but tattoos settle in, they age, the lines fuzz a little bit, and so you make the design thinking 10 years ahead. That's like a good like method. And so when they want something that's only going to look a certain way for a shorter amount of time, a couple of years or so, then you want to at least educate the public on what you think might last much longer in their skin. You don't make things too light. Bunch of like considerations for doing a tattoo, but can't give it all away here. My worldview about the current state of the arts. Well, going to art school gives you an opportunity to see how well, at least around here, like the New York gallery scene runs. And it kind of feels, I mean, it's a wide range of stuff, but like I guess where all like the billions of dollars are is like art is being used as a way to like store wealth and grow wealth like outside of like the tax code or somehow like getting around taxes or something. So that's kind of like the worst of it maybe, or the most expensive part of it. But I mean, art is everywhere. It's in all the culture and content that we absorb and pay for. Like there's multiple art worlds, and I'm not really concerned with what's going on in like the galleries in New York. I like going to the Met sometimes, see what was done before, just see the amount of like man hours put into all the pieces in like one room. It's kind of staggering, but I mean, there's room for everything and anything you want to do. So whether you get attention or not from it, or it's going to satisfy you in some way, or you can make a living off of it, is separate from being allowed to make whatever you want and have it exist solely for your own enjoyment or impulse or compulsion to make something exist. The subject matter of a dragon, I mean, besides them being all over like Japanese tattooing, is that a dragon is a mythological creature, and it's a template. You can make it look like anything you want, really. You can draw it. Every time you draw it, it's new and different, and you can kind of like mold it like clay into whatever you want. So it's like a medium in itself. And if you take like, you don't need a lot of different themes necessarily in something like Japanese style tattooing. You take like a dozen themes and you can just, or and tattooing in general, when you're like searching for maybe a style or something over the decades, you just keep returning to the same themes, and they turn out different every single time you do them. Yeah, this was the first bigger dragon in this series. Not the first big dragon I've done, but you see some things on Instagram that kind of like, they piqued my interest, softly graded out a little more, and if I could like achieve that by thinning out my grays and being really patient to kind of layer up some of these like lighter grays. And my problem is like once it's done, you look at it and say, well, I would have done it differently. I would have changed this and that and the other thing. And so then it goes on to the next one and the next one. And they're all iterations. Nothing's a masterpiece. They're all just attempts every time. But I enjoy this one. I kind of like how everything like is kind of like forced into the space. So it's a rectangular kind of shape. And that's me just liking, I like filling the space somewhat. It's not like you need to show every single limb of like, let's say the dragon has 2 arms and 2 legs. And if you tried to fit this on the body somewhere with like other elements, you can like just have a piece of something just kind of pop out somewhere to like suggest. It doesn't always have to follow perfect anatomy. Like this arm especially is like exactly the opposite direction of this one. It was a conscious choice to do that, but it kind of looks weird. It looks really weird. It's probably more like this right arm is forwards, but then this back one meant that it had to be like kind of stuck up like this or something. So I like those kind of skewed dynamic things, but I'm not going off of any like realistic anatomy. You just kind of fit it in wherever you can, and then think about it afterwards. Like you could follow realistic anatomy like of a Komodo dragon or lizard or a snake or something, and they start to look more substantial and correct and even more real when you do follow that. But when you get more like playful with it, then that all just goes out the window. It all depends on your intent and what you're trying to do, and if you succeed in doing it or not. But if you don't set out to do that thing, you don't fail. You're just exploring. Oh, my influences. My art influences. I like Alexis Rockman, the painter, or Neil Rausch, Bruegel. Who else? Lauren Marks, Phil Hale, tattooers that I like are like Mike Dorsey and Shige and Jess Yen, Matt Lambden. He did my whole back. And a bazillion others. Like I could just go on and on. Move Slow in Toronto. The Chronic guys in Toronto. Looking at Chronic Inc. and how they do all their black and gray for like Japanese sleeves or like whatever their Asian style sleeves. I can't just say Japanese because like Taiwanese artists, Korean artists, Vietnamese artists are all like invoking that and have their own like flavor and their own versions and flair and everything. But having Instagram is great because it's this endless flow of mind-blowing world-class imagery that you can just pour over and have influence or inform your tattoos like in real time almost. You see these artists working like they're like posting work in progress stuff all the time, and through the feed it's more than what any tattooers ever had like 20 years ago before Instagram. Just being able to see the vast amount of imagery and be influenced by it. Balance between like letting go and also being really productive. But I mean, when you're tattooing, it's like you're doing the business. So I'm not in any position where I can just do whatever. Like you have to find a healthy balance between what the client wants and what you want to do, or you just do what they want. And so every person that comes in, you have to like kind of teach them a little bit about like what works, what doesn't work, and try and find like a happy like in between place where everybody's happy and what they're willing to like pay for and all that. So you have to, and like what the amount of pain they want to endure. There's so many considerations. You kind of go over everything, and then you're always trying to like, you know, upsell them to some amazing piece that you want to work on, but not everybody wants that or likes that. So you can't do that for everybody. Not yet anyway, but that's the hope. That's the goal. Just do 30 bodysuits a year, and I'll be totally busy and totally happy. When people like how their first tattoo comes out with you, they trust you to just do what they want every time in the future. So if you keep giving them the tattoos that they like, they'll keep coming back, and that's how you kind of build up your base clientele, and then everyone's happy. But yeah, like people get tattoos because they can be therapeutic sometimes. Not all the time, but sometimes. And they kind of like can bookend your life in some way, or put an exclamation point on some event in your life and all that. And so it's cool to see that happen. Like I just did this guy, he had to get approved by the state because he's like a ward of the state. He's in a wheelchair, and he's assisted needs. And they got it all approved by the state, and he came in and he got his family's names on his arm. And that was like his bucket list, so he was stoked. It feels that like my creative energy is in like short supply, it's limited, and it's work comes first. So whatever's left over, I might treat myself to like a painting or drawing or something. But it almost feels like it's a wasted effort that should be used towards something that I could like further my tattooing with. So it does, I have kind of like trained myself into making things that are more tattooable, with the intent that they could be tattooed later on at some point, because the amount of effort and time put into something that's not going to do that and just like sit in my apartment is fine and all, but I did that for 20 years. And I want to have some sort, it's not, the cost-benefit analysis does not benefit me making like art for pleasure in my free time. Like I said, I don't have a lot of extra energy for it, because on my days off, I'm drawing for the next week, right, which I did today. So like, it's exhausting. And just kind of like, letting go. I've seen artists like tattooers will do these really loose paintings because they're so sick, kind of like sick, and their soul is sick of making like really tight tattoos, or they have to be like kind of like tight. So then they'll make something really loose just to like get it out. But that's probably also like some sort of impulse for their soul or something. Tattooing is tight because you can't put a big brushstroke in as a tattoo. You have to slowly line it and make it look like, yeah, it's going to be an illustration of a brushstroke. You can like jack up the voltage and like make a quick line or something and have a little bit of flair, but it's not huge. It's more like when you design it, you can design it with the flair, but then when you tattoo it, it is tight. You have to methodically get the ink pigment into the body and check it as you go. Yeah, in like, I guess like, I don't know, like Japanese folklore, like the dragon or the tiger is like feminine energy or like represents like women, and the dragon represents like a path towards like mastery or something like that. And so from my perspective, it's always like wrestling with the two like masculine and feminine energies, or there's always some sort of conflict. And so the physical fighting of two animals is just like a metaphor for like emotional conflict and like conflict between like in like relationships and stuff like that. Same with like a hangya mask is like a woman that's been cheated on, and like she's got the rage face that comes on, something like that. I'm not an expert in it, but they're great like vessels to like just explore weird dynamic poses. And I like having things all jumbled together so they look like chaotic and they're a little hard to read, but if you like follow it, you can still kind of like see what's happening. Like when I sit down with the paper, I'm not doing any like prep drawings. I'll do a pencil drawing like right on the thing and just kind of figure it out as I go to like fit in the space. But I'm sure if I like drew it on tracing paper a couple times and like changed things, it would like look a lot nicer and like fit better. But sometimes, I mean, this is that kind of like, oh, I'm doing it as art and I'm not doing it for a tattoo assignment, so I'm not too worried about it coming out weird. Concepts, I like Taoism, kind of like the individual path, like the journey through, and that's like the point. And duality, and like, I guess like existential dread, you know, like being okay with the conflict. You know, the conflict is like a big part of life, and it shouldn't be like eradicated or anything. Like there's healthy conflict, internal and external, and then there's unhealthy conflict. But the healthy conflict is like what Mark Manson says, and well, person influence, but it's like the good kind of suffering is the stuff that you're willing to sacrifice for because it has value to you, and you will allow yourself to suffer through that sacrifice to give meaning to your life. But it's your choice, and that's like doing anything difficult or making art that's challenging. It's like none of it, it's all like taking up your precious time in your life. You spend hours and hours making it because when it's done, and the process of seeing it come to life is satisfying enough that it's enough to like sustain you into the next season. Being attracted to tattooing as some sort of like suffering and pain. I think what I was drawn, well, we said this in the past, like tattoos are supposed to hurt, and there is something like their therapeutic qualities involved in it, but tattoos are as old as humanity, and or probably might even like predate modern humans a little bit, but at least as old as modern humans. And for all different reasons we got tattooed, and we said in the past they kind of like can exist as psychic armor, where you're projecting out your identity through shaping your imagery. And as your identity like grows and develops, you can keep adding to it like piecemeal or like changing it or going over it, and by putting all these like drawings on yourself, permanent fashion or something. It's a way to like codify your agency. But I think tattoos should hurt because there's like a mental like bonding that happens like through pain and through like surviving the pain or whatever, and having the tattoo represent something and then having it be painful, and then as it heals and becomes permanent, then it's like solidified in your mind in some way. But that's kind of like subconscious and not a diagnosis of any kind. Talk to your doctor. Using color in a piece. Well, we hung them and started over there, so it just happens to be the first one. But the reason there's less color in here is because, like I said, I was trying to do more with like a batch of like ink wash, like more like delicate ink wash designs versus like big colorful ones or whatever, but still within like the tattooing method, things are inside lines and they're built up in overlapping things. The color choices, I mean, tiger's kind of orange and brown or yellow and brown. Bamboo's green. In Japanese prints, the water is gray most of the time, this gray wash. And the snake, I mean, you can just do anything with that. So I didn't want to add like too many colors, but red, pink, and blue, the main pieces of it. I could do it like 1,000 different ways, but it was like the tiger's a warmer yellow color, so I'm gonna have like a cooler color. I think maybe this like vibrant magenta, which I mean, I'm using what I have, so I've got like a bazillion inks at home and like stacks of art supplies, and I just kind of like pick out of what I have. So it's not always like thinking it through conceptually, like, oh, this needs to be blue and hot pink because there's some story there. No, you just like, oh, this might look cool, try it out, and then see how it works. And I didn't do a test on it either, but I do love working on watercolor paper because it just soaks up that color so well. You can like move it around a little bit if you need to, versus like this vellum that I used on the other ones. So I think use arches, everybody. Arches is the best. It's always been the best. It's just another animal. I don't know the folklore of it. Like, I should look into all that because it's a treasure trove, but in every culture it's like a little different. Like in the West, the snake is like evil because it had knowledge, the biblical snake with all that, but I wasn't thinking about any of that. Just like a battle royale is like this theme in like back pieces in tattooing or in tattooing where like 3 or 4 animals are all just fighting. It's usually like an eagle, a dragon, a snake, and then maybe like some other ones. So you can just take that theme and run with it, try things out. I think the next one I'll put a little like praying mantis in there, or like the 12 animal like hungar form. You know, mixing cultures together. Nothing's like in stone. Nothing's ever going to be like correct or like traditional coming from me, because I wasn't from there or anything. So it's just my appreciation. Big tattoo designs, or a lot of tattoo designs, will use whatever base color of the skin is going to be the background color, or the negative space of the skin will be the lightest color on the body, and everything else will be darker by contrast in order to create a shape or an image, because you're not going to pack like a light color into any sort of like skin tone and have it like come out looking like paint on top of something. It's going to be somewhere in between. I have seen like a white dragon with like white pigment packed into like someone with like pretty pale skin. It's like outlined. It still looks pretty good and like white and everything, and I think they probably put a background in too to like make it contrast out even more. But you don't really do that tattooing too much. You let the skin tone be the lightest part of the tattoo as negative space. Title of the show, I really didn't care about like what the names of these things were or what the title was going to be, and so I very off the cuff just came up hastily and unceremoniously chose Dragon Extravaganza to maybe like, pump some air into the name or something. And then you just lean into it because we're all goofballs, so you do martial arts in the center to make a little promotion. Act like a crazy man. Yeah, there's probably a long thread in that. I did like kung fu for a number of years in my 20s, and then I like abruptly stopped. But I mean, it left its indelible mark on my my being. The discipline of like, the other, or a culture that you're not acquainted with, but you want to be. You let it have mystique instead of doing any sort of like homework or outreach or anything. You try and understand, but there's a little bit of magic in the ignorance, I would say. We live in a world of power and corruption and a world of violence, and there's no like Lego movie instructions to life. If you weren't making something, you'd be spending your time doing something else. So it's a chosen activity that you discover is rewarding to you, and then, like Bukowski said, you find something you love and try and let it kill you. So, like I said, this is like my third career tattooing, so it took a while to get here, but I like where I'm at. Yeah, the dragon and sword, these are like Vajras, kind of. They're like an abstract version. It's Buddhist. The sword is supposed to like cut through some sort of like psychic blockage or some sort of like restraint or attachment, cut through your attachments to samsara and cut a path towards enlightenment or to enlightenment. And I've seen the dragon and sword like put together like this a bunch of times, so I'm just like, I'll do one too. And so yeah, it comes out of like Buddhism, but it's somewhat irrelevant to it. I mean, it just looks cool. I really did not like conceptually plan out this series or anything. It was just like, do one, and then, I have a blank page. Let's start a phoenix, and then you just go. All right, I have 2 dragons. Let's do a 3rd dragon. Let's do a couple tigers. I had in the back of my head, couple tigers, few dragons, and then some other ones. And it's endless. Like, you could just keep doing iterations forever. It never ends, ever. I just plucked it. And that's what I did with all these, really. It's like, I like how that looks. Let me try one myself. And they got it from somewhere. And they got it from somewhere. Yeah, they all saw it somewhere. Maybe added a little thing. I know peonies are like something about like strength. And I don't know what mums are, but in like Japanese tattooing, like each flower is like a different season, and it's like Japanese maples are fall, and those are like the red pot looking ones, and the cherry blossoms are spring, and I forget which ones. These are probably like summer, and the peonies are probably like winter or something, or I don't know, something like that. They represent the different seasons, 4 seasons, and like there's something about like, see, this is why the Japanese like tattoos were so like advanced, because they figured all this out like 100 years ago, and it was like, you have a main story. If you have a bodysuit, like the back piece tells one main story, and then the arms tell like side stories relating to that main story, and then like the front piece is like maybe 2 other stories, and the legs are 2 other stories, but they're all like serving the bigger story of like the main, larger, singular centerpiece. There are like some artists out there now where like you go and they tell you what you get. They kind of like figure out your personality real quick and like, or talk with you for a while and then like decide what you're gonna get, and you just let them do. So that's kind of interesting, that you're gonna let the artist kind of like decide for you what the imagery is gonna be. It says that the koi fish story is that they're trying to swim up the waterfall and they can't do it. And after like 100 years, some really persistent koi fish swims all the way up the waterfall to the top. And for its efforts, the dragon god, or the gods, grant the koi dragon status and turn it into a dragon, so it becomes a god or a demigod or something. And so the dragon koi is like, you know, like that Pokemon evolution. Koi are cool. I mean, they're carp. Dragon koi look cool. And it's like you take just some, like how many different like weird ways can you draw a snake? I've seen them in so many different ways. So cool. And they just you keep seeing ones that somebody does. It's like, whoa, how do they even do that? That's where I'm trying to like get to, is like, you blow your own mind. There's a few stories and places where the imagery came from. It's all about, like, you know how abstract art doesn't need to be talked about, just experienced? This functions the same way. You don't read into it too much. You can if you want to, but you don't have to as a rule. There's always that like attempt to differentiate the elements in a tattoo so they don't get lost, even though like the composition is very confusing. I'm not sure if the Battle Royale like how far back that motif goes, but at least like 100 years. I think. I don't even know where it came from. Like Pharaoh's horses is a motif, and that came from like these religious paintings, and it came from like the story of the Pharaoh in like the Bible, and it's the 3 horse heads running. But that has, like, the motif takes on a life of its own now. It's like a known, or like a Rock of Ages, or a Battle Royale, or Eagles in the Sun, fighting over the rabbit. Like, some of them, like, kind of flourished, like, post-World War II, because there was a lot of, like, everything happening in the world at that time, but a lot of, like, crossing of imagery. It would be cool if, like, there was a dragon that you could see like parts of it, but it like wrapped so many times that it like took over the entire page. And then there's just farther and farther back layers of scales. I am James Post, and this is Dragon Extravaganza here at M Gallery's P&A at the Bohack Native Arboretum in Washington, New Jersey.
Thank you so much, James.
Thank you.